Okay, so age 10 to 25.
Yes.
Probably a lot of kids of those who are listening to the Retire Sooner podcast. How did they grow up? What is their perspective?
Yeah, they grew up a
world?
different life again. I think I call them Echo X's, just because I think they have a lot of those traits in the sense that there's an economic decline relative to what they experienced. You know, this a lot of them say the same thing. What event do you remember? When I talk to groups of young people, I ask them, what was a remembering event? What do you remember that sort of stayed with you? The Great Recession of 2008 or 10, whatever the dates they pick, which is interesting because they were children. And who as a child even knows the term recession? You follow? So they were clearly aware of that. And so I think that they are children of scarcity in effect, and they are very concerned with their livelihoods, with being employable, and they are also private. They are very concerned about who they will demonstrate who they are. It's called the curated self. They are like their Gen X parents.
Hold on. Okay, so that makes sense in one way, and another, I have a question. Is that
sure?
If they're private, but isn't this the generation that's used social media the most?
Oh no, but it's curated, which is interesting. They learn from the mistakes of the millennial. The millennial was putting every stupid thing they ever did on the internet, and they weren't filtering it. You see, and now that they realize, oh my God, that's going to stay on the internet forever, right? These kids noticed that, and so their stupidity is probably more, I will say, deliberate in what they're trying to accomplish as opposed to random and happening to them.
So they learned from the millennials that the millennials were sharers. They were sharers,
yes.
Correct?
And they were naive users of the internet.
That's right. They were new.
Absolutely.
And the Gen Z learned from that and realized that they need to curate what they were going to put out there to the world.
Yes, and they're very interesting. The other thing they're doing, whereas the millennial is looking for purpose in life. They look for their purpose, which I think is, we should all be looking for purpose. I'm okay with that. What Gen Z has gone a step further. What they're doing is they call this side hustle thing. This side hustle is not just a purpose-driven thing, it's an economic thing. And so what they're doing is they're trying to create a revenue stream for themselves on the side that they may turn into a full-blown business, which is interesting. They're monetizing their interests.
Is it because they were children of scarcity?
I think that's part of it. I also think it's attached to fame. I think that people want to be an influencer, and there's an attraction to that elevation of self in the media because they do have a greater fixation with the visual forms. TikTok is surmounting YouTube in terms of its attraction, and YouTube is very popular. So these are visual arenas, and they want to be seen. So I think they're going to leverage that more. I think Gen Z is the digital native, and millennials are digitally fluent.
Millennials are digitally fluent. Gen Z just that's what they did.
They live it.
They grew up with an iPhone for the most part. They grew up on an iPad.
This idea of a virtual workplace will be perfected as a consequence of Gen Z, not as a consequence of we Gen Xers or boomers or millennials saying, well, how do we make this more user-friendly? I think they're the ones who are going to solve that.